In the year 2378, Earth stood at a crossroads. For decades, humanity had watched the stars with a mix of curiosity and caution. Among the many alien civilizations discovered, one stood out: the Valeth. Their empire stretched across dozens of star systems, their technology far beyond anything humans could dream of creating. They were powerful, mysterious, and unpredictable. But for the first time, they had reached out to Earth not with hostility, but with an offer of peace. The news of the Valeth's proposal sent shockwaves through Earth's governments. Some saw it as a chance to secure alliances and advance human knowledge. Others feared it was a trap, a clever ruse to lure Earth into a false sense of security. Despite the risks, Earth's leaders agreed to send a delegation to meet with the Valeth aboard their massive orbital station near Saturn. It was a bold move, but one they believed necessary for the survival of the human race. Leading the mission was Captain Laura Hayes, a seasoned officer known for her sharp instincts and unshakable resolve. She had spent years commanding ships on the edge of explored space, always ready for whatever dangers might arise. Accompanying her was Daniel Carter, a skilled diplomat with a knack for finding common ground, even in the most tense situations. Rounding out the team was Rachel Monroe, a brilliant scientist specializing in alien technologies. Together, they represented the best Earth had to offer: diplomacy, intellect, and strength. The delegation traveled aboard the starship Odyssey, one of Earth's most advanced vessels. Sleek and powerful, the ship was equipped with cutting-edge engines and state-of-the-art sensors. But there was something else hidden within its hull: experimental weapons, designed to give humanity an edge if things went wrong. Though the mission was officially peaceful, Earth's military had insisted on preparing for the worst. Laura didn't argue. She trusted her instincts, and they told her that trusting the Valeth completely would be a mistake. As the Odyssey approached the Valeth station, the crew gathered on the bridge to take in the sight. The station loomed in the distance, a colossal structure of shimmering metal and glowing energy fields. Its design was unlike anything human engineers had ever seen, a blend of organic curves and geometric precision. It looked more like a living organism than a machine, pulsating faintly with an inner light. Laura felt a chill run down her spine. There was something unsettling about it, something she couldn't quite put into words. When the Odyssey docked, the Valeth greeted them with what seemed like genuine warmth. Kelver, the Valeth ambassador, welcomed the humans with a deep, resonant voice that echoed through the chamber. His appearance was striking: tall and slender, with smooth, silver skin and large, obsidian eyes that seemed to pierce right through you. He extended a long, delicate hand in greeting, and Daniel stepped forward to shake it. The gesture was symbolic, a small step toward bridging the gap between two vastly different species. Kelver led the delegation on a tour of the station, showing off its advanced facilities and explaining the Valeth's vision for cooperation. He spoke of shared knowledge, mutual prosperity, and a future where humans and Valeth could thrive together. Daniel listened intently, nodding along as he scribbled notes on his datapad. Rachel, however, kept her focus on the details, her sharp eyes scanning every corner of the station. She noticed subtle things: the way the Valeth guards moved with practiced efficiency, the faint hum of machinery beneath their feet, the occasional flicker of light in the walls. Something about it all felt off. Laura shared Rachel's unease. As they walked through the corridors, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The Valeth guards stationed at every turn seemed to alert, their gazes lingering just a little too long. And then there were the restricted area sealed doors marked with cryptic symbols that Vor casually dismissed as maintenance zones. But Laura had seen enough during her career to know when something wasn't right. She made a mental note to investigate further, even if it meant risking offense. Despite her concerns, Laura kept her composure. She smiled politely as Kelver explained the schedule for the upcoming peace talks, nodding along as if everything were perfectly normal. Inside, however, her mind raced. Was this truly an opportunity for peace, or was it a carefully orchestrated trap? She glanced at Daniel, who seemed genuinely excited by the possibilities ahead. His optimism was admirable, but Laura couldn't afford to let her guard down. Not here, not now. That evening, as the delegation settled into their quarters, Laura called a private meeting with Rachel and Daniel. The room was small, but functional, its walls lined with soft blue lighting that cast an eerie glow. Laura wasted no time getting to the point. "I don't trust them," she said bluntly. "There's something about this place and about Kelver that doesn't add up." Rachel nodded in agreement. "I've been analyzing the station's energy signatures," she said. "There are fluctuations I can't explain. It's possible they're hiding something big, something dangerous." Daniel frowned, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. "You're both jumping to conclusions," he said. "We're guests here. We need to give them the benefit of the doubt." Laura sighed. She respected Daniel's dedication to diplomacy, but she also knew that blind trust could be deadly. "I'm not saying we should start a fight," she replied, "but we'd be fools not to prepare for the worst. Rachel, keep digging into those energy readings. See if you can find anything concrete. And Daniel." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Just stay sharp, okay?" The meeting ended with an uneasy silence hanging in the air. Laura returned to her quarters, staring out the window at the vast expanse of space beyond. The Valeth station floated against the backdrop of Saturn's rings, beautiful, yet foreboding. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger than they realized. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: Earth had brought weapons for a reason, and Laura intended to make sure they were ready to use them if necessary. The next morning, the human delegation gathered in a large conference room aboard the Valeth station. The walls were smooth and metallic, glowing faintly with a soft, pulsating light that seemed almost alive. A long table dominated the center of the room, its surface covered in intricate patterns that shifted and changed as if responding to unseen forces. Kelver stood at the far end, his tall, slender frame exuding an air of calm authority. He greeted the humans warmly, though his obsidian eyes remained unreadable. Daniel Carter took his seat at the table, his mind racing with possibilities. This was the moment he had been preparing for. The chance to lay the groundwork for a lasting alliance between Earth and the Valeth. He opened his datapad and began outlining key points for discussion: trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and joint scientific research. As he spoke, Kelver listened intently, occasionally nodding or making a gesture that Daniel interpreted as approval. For a brief moment, it felt like progress was possible. Rachel Monroe, however, wasn't as convinced. She sat quietly, observing every detail of the room, and the Valeth, who moved about silently in the background. Her sharp eyes caught things others might have missed: the way Kelver Sades exchanged quick, furtive glances, the subtle tension in the guards' postures, the faint hum of machinery that seemed to grow louder whenever certain topics were raised. Something about the entire setup felt rehearsed, as if the Valeth were following a script rather than engaging in genuine dialogue. Laura Hayes kept her expression neutral, but her instincts were on high alert. She noticed how Kelver deflected questions about the station's capabilities, brushing them aside with vague promises of future discussions. When Rachel leaned over to whisper her concerns, Laura gave a slight nod, signaling that she shared the same suspicions. Still, they couldn't afford to act rashly. Any misstep could escalate tensions and jeopardize the mission. As the meeting continued, Kelver proposed a tour of the station's primary research facilities. "It is important," he said, his voice smooth and measured, "that you understand the scope of our achievements. Only then can we truly appreciate the potential of our partnership." His words sounded reasonable enough, but Laura detected a hint of something else beneath the surface: pride, perhaps, or even arrogance. Whatever it was, it made her uneasy. The tour began shortly after the meeting ended. Kelver led the group through a series of corridors, each more impressive than the last. The walls shimmered with holographic displays showing images of distant planets, advanced machinery, and sprawling cities. At one point, they passed a massive chamber filled with towering machines that pulsed with energy. Rachel slowed her pace, trying to get a closer look, but a Valith guard stepped forward to block her path. "This area is restricted," Kelver explained smoothly. "Sensitive operations are underway." Laura's jaw tightened. Restricted areas were becoming a recurring theme, and it only deepened her mistrust. She exchanged a glance with Rachel, who gave a barely perceptible shrug. They would have to find another way to investigate later. For now, they had no choice but to follow Kelver's lead. The final stop on the tour was the station's observation deck, a vast dome offering a breathtaking view of Saturn and its rings. The sight was awe-inspiring, but Laura found little comfort in it. Instead, she focused on the conversations happening around her. Kelver shades spoke in hushed tones, their voices too low for the humans to hear clearly. Laura strained to catch snippets of their words, picking up phrases like final phase and activation sequence. Her heart sank. Those terms didn't sound like they belonged in a peaceful negotiation. When the group returned to their quarters, Laura called another private meeting. This time, the atmosphere was heavier, charged with unspoken fears. "I think we're in trouble," she said without preamble. "Did you notice how many areas were off limits? And those comments I overheard, they weren't about diplomacy." Rachel nodded grimly. "I've been analyzing the energy signatures again," she said. "They're consistent with weapons systems, big ones. If I'm right, this station isn't just a diplomatic hub, it's a fortress." Daniel frowned, his optimism wavering under the weight of their findings. "Are you saying this whole thing is a setup?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "That doesn't make sense. Why go to all this trouble just to ambush us?" "Maybe it's not just about us," Laura replied. "Think about it. They've shown us their strength, made us believe. They're willing to negotiate. But what if this is all part of a larger plan to weaken Earth's defenses before striking?" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If Laura was right, the stakes were far higher than anyone had anticipated. Humanity wasn't just negotiating for peace, it was fighting for survival. Later that evening, Laura decided to take matters into her own hands. She activated her communicator and contacted the Odyssey, still docked at the station. Lieutenant Emily Shaw answered immediately, her face appearing on the small screen. "Captain," Emily said, her tone professional, but tinged with concern. "Everything okay?" "For now," Laura replied, "but listen carefully. I need you to keep the ship on high alert. Run diagnostics on all systems, especially the experimental weapons, and prepare contingency plans for everything." Emily hesitated, clearly sensing the gravity of the situation. "Understood," she said finally. "We'll be ready." After ending the call, Laura stared out the window at the endless void of space. The Valith station loomed nearby, its lights twinkling like stars. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not just by Kelver, but by something far more sinister. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain: Earth's delegation had walked into a trap, and it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. That night, sleep eluded Laura. She lay awake, replaying the day's events in her mind. Every detail, no matter how small, seemed significant now. The restricted areas, the cryptic conversations, the energy signatures, it all pointed to one conclusion. The Valith weren't interested in peace. They were planning something far more dangerous, and Earth's delegation was caught right in the middle of it. Rachel, too, struggled to rest. She sat at her desk, poring over data readings and running simulations. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she tried to piece together the puzzle. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became. The station was equipped with technology capable of devastating Earth itself. Whether it was a weapon designed to target the planet directly, or a means of crippling its defenses, the threat was undeniable. Meanwhile, Daniel wrestled with his own doubts. He wanted to believe in the possibility of peace, but the evidence was mounting against it. He thought back to Kelver's polished demeanor, his carefully chosen words. Had it all been an act? Was the ambassador simply playing a role, lulling them into a false sense of security? By the time dawn broke, the mood among the delegation had shifted. The initial excitement of the mission had given way to a growing sense of dread. Laura, Rachel, and Daniel met once more, their faces etched with determination. They knew they couldn't confront Kelver directly, not yet, but they also knew they couldn't sit idly by and wait for disaster to strike. "We need to gather more information," Laura said firmly. "Rachel, see if you can access the station's internal systems. Find out exactly what they're hiding. Daniel, keep Kelver occupied. Buy us as much time as you can." "And you?" Rachel asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'll figure out our escape options," Laura replied. "If things go south, we'll need a way out, and fast." With their plan in place, the three of them set to work. Each knew the risks, but none of them hesitated. They were representatives of Earth, bound by duty and driven by hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The following day began with an uneasy calm. Laura Hayes woke early, her mind already racing through the tasks ahead. She knew time was running out, and every second counted. The delegation couldn't afford to wait for the Valith to make the first move. They needed answers, and they needed them now. Laura dressed quickly and headed to the small workspace where Rachel Monroe had spent most of the night analyzing data. The scientist looked exhausted, her eyes bloodshot but still sharp as she pored over streams of numbers on her screen. "Anything new?" Laura asked quietly, closing the door behind her to ensure privacy. Rachel nodded, though her expression remained grim. "I've found traces of something big," she said, pointing to a series of graphs on her monitor. "The energy signatures match what you'd expect from a massive weapon system, something capable of targeting planets. If I'm right, this station isn't just a fortress, it's a launch platform." Laura's stomach tightened. "Can we confirm it?" "Not yet," Rachel admitted, "but I think I can hack into their internal systems. There's a maintenance terminal near the restricted zone we passed yesterday. If I can get access, I might be able to pull more details." Laura hesitated. Breaking into the Valith's systems was risky, but they were running out of options. "Do it," she said finally, "but be careful. If they catch you—" "I know," Rachel interrupted, her voice steady despite the danger. "Trust me, I don't plan on getting caught." While Rachel prepared for her mission, Laura turned her attention to Daniel Carter. He was pacing in his quarters, clearly torn between his role as a diplomat and the growing evidence that the Valith weren't trustworthy. When Laura entered, he stopped abruptly, his face lined with worry. "We need you to keep Kelver distracted," Laura said without preamble. "Talk to him about anything, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, whatever. Just keep him busy while Rachel works." Daniel frowned. "You really think this is all a setup? That he's been lying to us this whole time?" "I don't know for sure," Laura admitted, "but everything points to it. We can't take chances." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Fine, I'll do what I can. But if this goes wrong—" "It won't," Laura said firmly, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. "Just trust us." With their roles assigned, the team split up. Rachel slipped out of the quarters, her movements deliberate and cautious. She wore a plain gray jumpsuit, blending in with the station's human technicians, who occasionally passed by. Her destination was the maintenance terminal. Near the restricted area, a narrow alcove tucked away in a quiet corridor. As she approached, she scanned the surroundings carefully, ensuring no Valith guards were nearby. Reaching the terminal, Rachel inserted a small device into its interface port. The gadget hummed softly as it connected to the station's network, bypassing layers of security protocols with alarming speed. Rachel had spent years studying alien technology, and her expertise paid off now. Within minutes, streams of data began appearing on her handheld screen. Her eyes widened as she sifted through the information. The station's core housed not one, but multiple weapon systems, each designed for planetary-scale destruction. Worse still, there was mention of a countdown, a timeline leading to some kind of activation event. Rachel's heart pounded as she copied the data onto a secure drive. She didn't have much time. Someone would notice the breach eventually. Just as she was about to disconnect, a shadow fell across the terminal. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. Slowly, she turned to see Jason Cole standing behind her. Jason was a technician from the Odyssey, tasked with overseeing routine repairs during the mission. His presence here shouldn't have raised suspicion. He was supposed to be working, but the look on his face told Rachel otherwise. "What are you doing?" Jason asked, his voice low but firm. For a moment, Rachel considered lying, but something in Jason's gaze made her hesitate. Instead, she decided to trust him. "We're in trouble," she whispered. "This station, it's a weapon. The Valith aren't interested in peace. They're planning something catastrophic." Jason's eyes widened, but he didn't argue. "How bad is it?" he asked simply. "Bad. Enough that Earth could be at risk," Rachel replied. "I need to get this data back to Laura. Can I count on you to help?" Jason nodded without hesitation. "Let's go." Together, they hurried back toward the delegation's quarters, moving swiftly, but avoiding drawing attention. Along the way, Jason explained that he had grown suspicious after noticing unusual activity among the Valith engineers. "Something's been off since we arrived," he said. "I thought I was imagining things, but now, you're not," Rachel finished, gripping the data drive tightly. When they reached the quarters, Laura was waiting. Her expression hardened as Rachel relayed the findings. "It's worse than we thought," Rachel said. "They are planning to activate the weapons soon. We don't know exactly when, but it's clear they've been stalling us until then." Laura clenched her fists, her mind racing. "We need to warn the Odyssey. Emily needs to prep the ship for immediate departure and possibly combat." Before anyone could respond, an alarm blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed along the corridors, bathing everything in an ominous glow. Over the intercom, Calvarez's voice boomed, calm but commanding. "Attention, unauthorized access detected. All personnel are to remain in designated areas until further notice." Laura swore under her breath. "They know." Rachel glanced at the data drive in her hand. "If they find this, we're done for." "Then we move now," Laura said decisively. "Rachel, give the drive to Jason. He'll take it to the Odyssey. You and Daniel stay here and keep gathering intel. I'll create a diversion." "No," Rachel protested. "It's too dangerous. There's no other way," Laura shot back. "We're running out of time." Without waiting for further argument, Laura grabbed a small disruptor pistol from her bag and headed for the door. Before leaving, she turned to Jason. "Get that data to Emily. Tell her to prepare for the worst." Jason nodded, clutching the drive tightly. "Be careful." As Laura disappeared into the chaos of the station, Rachel and Daniel exchanged worried glances. "What do we do now?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling slightly. "We survive," Rachel said grimly. "And we make sure Earth knows what's coming." Meanwhile, Laura moved quickly through the corridors, her weapon drawn but hidden beneath her jacket. The station was alive with activity as Valith guards swept through the halls, searching for intruders. Laura used every trick she knew to avoid detection, ducking into alcoves and slipping through side passages. Her goal was simple: reach the reactor chamber and disable the station's power supply. If she could cut the energy flow, It might buy enough time for the Odyssey to escape, and perhaps even strike back as she neared the reactor. Laura encountered a group of Valeth soldiers blocking her path. Thinking quickly, she activated a small EMP device, disabling their weapons temporarily. The sudden burst of static electricity sent the guards stumbling, giving her the opening she needed to slip past. Inside the reactor chamber, Laura found herself surrounded by towering machinery, humming with raw power. She located the main control panel and began overriding the systems, her hands flying over the unfamiliar interface. Sweat dripped down her forehead as alarms screamed around her, but she didn't stop. Finally, the lights flickered, and the hum of the reactor grew quieter, but her victory was short-lived. Heavy footsteps echoed behind her, and she turned to see Kelver stepping into the chamber, flanked by armed guards. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried a cold edge. "You humans are persistent," he said, "but your efforts are futile." Laura raised her weapon, her finger hovering over the trigger. "Maybe," she replied, "but Earth doesn't give up easily." Kelver tilted his head, studying her as if she were a curious specimen. "Perhaps there is more to your species than I anticipated. A pity it must end this way." Before either could act, a deafening explosion rocked the station. The lights dimmed, plunging the chamber into near darkness. In the confusion, Laura seized the opportunity to dive behind a console, narrowly avoiding the guards' fire. Whatever had caused the blast, it had bought her precious seconds and, maybe more far away. Aboard the Odyssey, Lieutenant Emily Shaw watched as the station's shields faltered. Jason had delivered the data drive just moments before, and Emily wasted no time putting the ship on full alert. "All hands to battle stations," she ordered, her voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. "Prepare to engage." Back on the station, Rachel and Daniel huddled in their quarters, listening to the distant rumble of explosions. They didn't know what was happening, but one thing was certain: the game had changed. Whatever happened next, humanity's fate hung in the balance, and so did theirs. The explosion that rocked the station was both a surprise and a lifeline. Laura Hayes crouched behind the reactor chamber's control console, her heart pounding as debris rained down around her. The Valeth guards scrambled to regain their footing, their weapons trained on the shadows where she hid. Kelver stood motionless, his obsidian eyes scanning the chaos with unnerving calm. For a moment, Laura wondered if he had expected this, had planned for it, but there was no time to dwell on such thoughts. She had to act, taking advantage of the confusion. Laura fired a disruptor pulse at the nearest guard, disabling his weapon. The sudden burst of energy sent sparks flying, momentarily blinding the others. She darted toward the exit, weaving between fallen machinery and shattered panels. Her movements were quick and deliberate, honed by years of training in high-stakes situations. Still, the odds were against her. More guards poured into the chamber, their shouts echoing through the dimly lit space. As she reached the doorway, Laura glanced back. Kelver hadn't moved. He simply watched her, his expression unreadable. "You can't stop us," he said, his voice carrying an eerie certainty. "Your resistance is meaningless." Laura didn't respond. There was no point arguing with someone who saw humanity as nothing more than an obstacle. Instead, she focused on survival. She slipped into the corridor, her mind racing. The explosion had weakened the station's power grid, but it wasn't enough to disable the entire facility. If Rachel's data was correct, and Laura had no reason to doubt Valeth still had the means to carry out their plan. Every second counted. Meanwhile, aboard the Odyssey, Lieutenant Emily Shaw worked tirelessly to coordinate the ship's response. The experimental weapon system had been activated, unleashing a swarm of autonomous drones equipped with EMP bursts. These drones swarmed around the station, targeting its outer defenses and disrupting communications. The Valeth fleet stationed nearby struggled to adapt, their sleek ships faltering under the relentless assault. Explosions lit up the void of space as shields collapsed and holes cracked under the pressure. Emily's hands flew across the controls, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Target their main cannons," she ordered. "We need to keep them distracted while Captain Hayes completes her mission." Jason Cole stood beside her, gripping the railing tightly. His initial role as a technician had shifted dramatically since delivering the data drive. Now, he monitored the station's internal systems, searching for any sign of Laura or the rest of the delegation. "I've got something," he said suddenly, pointing to a flickering display. "Looks like the reactor chamber sustained heavy damage." "That must have been the explosion." Emily nodded grimly. "Good work. Keep tracking her position. We'll extract her as soon as we can." Back on the station, Rachel Monroe and Daniel Carter remained trapped in their quarters, listening to the distant sounds of battle. The walls shook with each impact, and the air grew thick with smoke from overloaded systems. Rachel paced anxiously, clutch-butting a small handheld device she'd salvaged earlier. It wasn't much, a crude scanner rigged to detect life signs, but it was better than nothing. "We need to move," Rachel said finally, turning to Daniel. "Staying here won't help anyone." Daniel hesitated, clearly torn. "What about Laura? Shouldn't we wait for her?" Rachel shook her head. "She's buying us time. If we waste it, her sacrifice will mean nothing." Reluctantly, Daniel followed as Rachel opened the door and peeked into the corridor. The passage was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of failing systems. They moved cautiously, sticking close to the walls and avoiding open areas. Rachel used the scanner to guide them, her sharp eyes darting toward every shadow. She knew they weren't safe even if the Valith were preoccupied. Elsewhere, patrols could appear at any moment. Their progress was slow but steady. As they neared the docking bay, they encountered a group of human technicians huddled together, their faces pale with fear. One of them stepped forward, recognizing Rachel. "Dr. Monroe," he exclaimed, "thank God you're here." "What's going on?" "No time to explain," Rachel replied curtly. "Follow us. We're heading to the shuttle bay. Stick close and stay quiet." The technicians nodded, falling into line behind her. Daniel took up the rear, keeping watch for any threats. Despite his lack of combat experience, he felt a surge of determination. These people were counting on him, and so was Earth. Elsewhere, in the station, Laura fought her way through a maze of corridors, dodging patrols and disabling security systems as she went. Her disruptor pistol was running low on charge, forcing her to rely on stealth rather than firepower. She reached a service tunnel that led toward the docking bay, only to find it blocked by a collapsed beam. Cursing under her breath, she searched for another route. That's when she heard voices ahead, human voices. Peering around the corner, she spotted Rachel and Daniel leading a group of technicians. Relief washed over her, though she quickly masked it with determination. "About time I found you," she said, stepping into view. Rachel let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Laura, are you okay?" "Never better," Laura replied dryly. "Let's move. The Odyssey is waiting." Together, the group pressed onward, their pace quickening as the sound of gunfire grew louder. The Valith were mobilizing, sweeping the station in search of intruders. Laura took the lead, using her knowledge of the layout to navigate shortcuts and avoid confrontation. They reached the docking bay just as a squad of Valith soldiers entered from the opposite side. "There!" one of the soldiers shouted, raising his weapon. Laura didn't hesitate. She fired a disruptor pulse, creating a temporary barrier of static electricity. "Go!" she yelled, urging the others toward a small shuttle parked nearby. Rachel and Daniel ushered the technicians inside, while Laura covered their retreat. Bullets ricocheted off the walls as the Valith advanced, their glowing weapons cutting through the haze of smoke and sparks. Laura dove into the shuttle just as the hatch sealed shut. "Punch it," she ordered. The Palota young ensign named Mark didn't need to be told twice. The shuttle roared to life, lifting off the deck and hurtling toward the hangar doors. Outside, the Odyssey loomed in the distance, its sleek frame illuminated by flashes of light from the ongoing battle. The shuttle's coms crackled to life. As Emily's voice came through, "Hold tight. We're pulling you in." As the shuttle approached the Odyssey, Laura glanced back at the station. Fires raged within its corridors, and sections of the structure began to collapse. Whatever Kelver's plan had been, it was unraveling. But Laura knew this wasn't over, not yet. The Valith were still out there, their fleet regrouping even as the humans gained the upper hand. Once aboard the Odyssey, Laura joined Emily on the bridge, her presence commanding immediate attention. "Status report," she demanded, striding toward the main console. "We've disabled several of their ships," Emily replied, her tone clipped but professional. "But their flagship is still operational. It's launching fighters." Laura frowned, studying the tactical display. The Valith fleet was battered, but not broken. "We need to take out their command ship," she said. "If we cripple their leadership, the rest will fall apart." Emily nodded, relaying the order to the crew. The Odyssey surged forward, its engines roaring as it closed the gap between itself and the Valith flagship. Laser fire streaked across the void, lighting up the darkness with bursts of color. The humans fought with everything they had, knowing that failure meant not just their deaths, but the potential destruction of Earth itself. Inside the station, Kelver stood alone in the crumbling reactor chamber. His once imposing figure now seemed diminished, surrounded by the ruins of his grand plan. He stared at the viewport, watching as the human ship proved itself far more resourceful than he had anticipated. A flicker of emotion crossed his face, perhaps regret, perhaps anger, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You may win today," he murmured, almost to himself. "But this is not the end." Far away, aboard the Odyssey, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that Kelver was right. This victory was only the beginning of a much larger conflict, one that would test humanity's resolve in ways they couldn't yet imagine. But for now, they had survived, and sometimes survival was enough. The Odyssey roared through space, its engines straining against the gravitational pull of Saturn as it maneuvered into position. The battle raged around it, a chaotic dance of fire and light. Valith fighters swarmed like insects, their sleek ships darting in and out of range while unleashing volleys of energy blasts. On the bridge, Laura Hayes stood beside Lieutenant Emily Shaw, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Every decision mattered now, every second could mean the difference between victory and disaster. "We're closing in on their flagship," Emily reported, her voice calm but edged with urgency. "Their shields are down to 40%. If we hit them hard enough, we can cripple them." Laura nodded, her jaw tight. "Target their weapon systems first. We can't let them keep firing at us or Earth." Emily relayed the order, and the Odyssey unleashed another wave of drones. These small autonomous machines buzzed toward the Valith flagship, releasing EMP bursts that sizzled against its hull. The alien ship shuddered under the assault, its once imposing presence faltering as sparks erupted from damaged sections. Still, the Valith refused to surrender. Their commander must have been desperate, willing to sacrifice everything rather than admit defeat. Back aboard the station, Kelver watched the battle unfold with an unsettling calm. Fires licked at the walls of the reactor chamber, casting flickering shadows across his silver skin. He had known this mission carried risks, but he hadn't expected humanity to fight back so fiercely. They were clever, resourceful, and far more dangerous than his people had anticipated. Yet even as the station crumbled around him, Kelver remained resolute. This was only one skirmish in a much larger war the Valith would win, no matter the cost. "Activate the failsafe," he ordered, turning to one of his aides. "If we cannot claim victory today, then we will ensure they remember us." The aide hesitated, clearly uneasy. "Sir, the station's core is unstable. Triggering the failsafe could destroy us all." Kelver's gaze hardened. "Then do your duty. Humanity must understand what it means to oppose us." As the aide scrambled to comply, Kelver turned back to the viewport. Flames engulfed parts of the station, and explosions rippled through its corridors. Somewhere aboard the vessel, survivors fought desperately to escape. Among them were Laura, Rachel, Daniel, and the others who had uncovered the truth about the Valeth's plans. Kelver allowed himself a moment of reflection. Perhaps there was merit in studying these humans further, but not today. Today, survival took precedence over curiosity. Meanwhile, aboard the shuttle carrying the human delegation and technicians, tension ran high. The craft shook violently as debris from the station collided with its hull. Rachel Monroe gripped her seat tightly, her knuckles white, as she stared out the small window. Behind her, Daniel Carter tried to reassure the frightened technicians, though his own nerves were frayed. "We're almost there," he said, forcing a smile. "Just hold." Rachel didn't respond. Her mind raced with calculations, trying to piece together what might happen next. She knew the station's destruction wouldn't come without consequences. Even if they managed to escape, the Valeth fleet still posed a significant threat. And then there was Kelver's cryptic warning. "This is not the end." What did he mean? Was this truly just the beginning of something far worse? The shuttle docked with the Odyssey, and the group hurried onto the ship. Laura greeted them briefly before returning to the bridge, leaving Rachel and Daniel to oversee the evacuation efforts. Jason Cole joined them, his face pale but determined. "I've been monitoring the station's systems," he said. "Something big is about to happen. I think they're going to blow it." Rachel's stomach sank. "Blow it? You mean self-destruct?" Jason nodded grimly. "It looks like they've triggered some kind of failsafe. If we don't get clear, we'll be caught in the blast radius." Daniel swallowed hard. "How much time do we have?" "Not long," Jason admitted. "Maybe 5 minutes, tops." Without hesitation, Rachel grabbed a communicator and contacted Emily on the bridge. "Emily, listen carefully. The station is rigged to explode. We need to move now." Emily's voice came through the line, sharp and focused. "Understood. Hold on tight. We're pulling out." On the bridge, Laura gave the order to disengage from the battle and retreat. The Odyssey broke away from the Valeth flagship, its engines blazing as it accelerated toward open space. Explosions continued to rock the area, but the crew worked tirelessly to stabilize the ship and protect its passengers. Laura glanced at the tactical display, watching as the station's energy readings spiked dangerously high. Whatever Kelver had planned, it was going to be catastrophic. Seconds later, the station erupted in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave rippled outward, shaking the Odyssey despite its distance. Alarms blared on the bridge as the crew struggled to maintain control. Laura gripped the railing, her heart pounding as the aftershocks subsided. When the dust settled, all that remained of the Valeth station was a field of debris drifting slowly toward Saturn's atmosphere. "That should buy us some time," Emily said, exhaling sharply. "But we're not done yet. Their fleet is regrouping." Laura nodded, her expression grim. "Keep us ready. If they come after us again, we'll finish what we started." Below decks, Rachel and Daniel gathered the survivors, ensuring everyone was accounted for. Most of the technicians were shaken but unharmed, though several bore minor injuries from the earlier chaos. Rachel tended to a young engineer named Sarah, who had sprained her ankle during the rush to evacuate. As she applied a cold compress, Rachel couldn't help but think about how close they'd come to disaster. So many lives had been at stake. They weren't out of danger yet. Jason approached her, his face grave. "I just checked the scans. There's still a large chunk of the station intact. It's drifting toward Saturn, but it hasn't burned up completely." Rachel frowned. "What's inside it?" "I'm not sure," Jason admitted. But whatever it is, it survived the explosion. We should keep an eye on it. Rachel nodded, making a mental note to investigate further. For now, though, their priority was survival. The Odyssey limped through space, its systems strained but functional. Damage reports poured in from every corner of the ship, and the crew worked tirelessly to repair critical systems. Despite the exhaustion etched on their faces, there was a sense of quiet determination. They had faced the impossible and lived to tell the tale. Later, Laura convened a meeting with her senior officers. Emily, Rachel, and Daniel gathered in the briefing room, their expressions somber. Laura stood at the head of the table, her posture rigid as she addressed them. "We stopped them for now," she began. "But this isn't over. The Valeth won't give up easily. They'll come after us again, and next time, we might not be so lucky." "What do we do?" Daniel asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "How do we prepare for something like this?" "We adapt," Laura replied firmly. "We learn from what happened here." "Rachel, analyze everything you gathered from the station. Find out what they were planning and how we can counter it." "Emily, prioritize repairs and make sure our defenses are ready." "And Daniel," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "keep doing what you do best. If we're going to survive this, we'll need allies. Start thinking about how we can build trust not just with other species, but within humanity itself." Daniel nodded, though his usual optimism felt muted. "I'll do my best." As the meeting concluded, Laura stepped aside to speak privately with Rachel. "You did good work back there," she said quietly. "Without you, we wouldn't have made it." Rachel offered a small, weary smile. "We got lucky. But luck won't save us forever." "No," Laura agreed. "It won't, which is why we need to stay one step ahead. Keep digging into those files. Let me know if you find anything useful." "Will do," Rachel promised. As the crew dispersed, the weight of what they had endured settled over them. They had survived the ambush, uncovered the Valeth's true intentions, and escaped with their lives. But the scars of the encounter would linger, both physical and emotional. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing against overwhelming odds, but the cost of such resilience was steep. In the silence of her quarters, Laura gazed out the window at the vast expanse of stars. The Odyssey sailed onward, its journey far from over. Somewhere out there, the Valeth waited, plotting their next move. And somewhere closer, fragments of their destroyed station drifted silently, holding secrets that could change everything. For now, though, Laura allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. They had faced the storm and emerged battered but alive. That was enough for today. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers. But as long as humanity refused to back down, there was hope. And sometimes, hope was the most powerful weapon of all.